everyone to our lecture in the Rocks lecture series. And a very warm welcome to our speaker today, Bjarni Einarsson, who will speak to us about his research in Stöð in Stöðvarfjörður. Was it for the whale oil? But Bjarni is an archaeologist at the Archaeological Office. Now, Bjarni, I am delighted to have you with us today. And so without further ado, I now hand the virtual microphone over to you.
Okay, welcome all. Nice to see you, even new faces, one new face there. I'm going to tell you about Stöð. Rather superficially, I am not going into the real deep, but to present it and give you an idea of what how I'm thinking. To start with, I have to give you a short presentation of another site, which started it all, that is Vogur. Vogur is on the Reykjanes Peninsula, very near the Keflavik airport. There it all started. I found it 2001, and after a while, I came with this idea that this was not unusual farm. This was something else. And I will talk about that a little bit later. I started in 2002 in Vogur, and then I fully excavated it between 2009 and 2015. And the Stöð trial excavation started 2015 and has been going on since there. And then there is some technical information there. Can you see my arrow? Yes. Oh. Vogur is here. And Stöð is, I can't see it, but you know where it is. It's on the on the eastern coast of Iceland. This is how it began in Vogur. I was working for the parish of Keflavik, and I was using air photographs that were just about available then. And here you can see the hole. It was totally unknown. This is Stöð, the other picture, and here is the hole. This photo was taken on my request by a man called Björgvin. I asked him to go out when light snow had fallen and the sun was shining. So this is Vogur. I had to excavate it in 3 sections because I didn't have much money, so I had to take it in parts. The turf here is laid by us with a help from geophysics. The geophysics showed an hole there, and we used that picture to lay down the turf, and it fits perfectly as we started the excavation. This is a poster of Vogur. One of the most interesting finds is this here. This is a sperm whale tooth, and this is what started it all. I thought myself it was a walrus tusk because I was a novice then. I didn't know the difference between walrus tusks and sperm whale tooth. The material is more or less the same, but the sperm whale tooth is even better, if something, because it's whiter into the core, while walrus tusk can be brownish in the core. So this is an extremely valuable thing. And I think that sperm whale tooth and walrus tusks was the thing in Vogur. That was what they were after. Here we see an oil lamp, net sinker, and a bead. Only 4 beads in Stöð. This is the only written records of the settler of Stöð. As you can see, he was a heathen priest with considerable power, and he moved to Iceland, and then he disappears from history. There is no mention of him in any sagas anywhere. So now we are on the site. People are working. What we see here is the Younger Hall, which is 32 meters long, which is pretty good in Iceland, but it is the richest hall ever found in Iceland. I will show you some statistic about that later and some of the crucial finds. Here on this picture, we can see the Younger Hall goes from here to here, and the Older Hall goes from here to here. So they share the long walls mostly, and this is the doorway into the Younger Hall. Another door was then found here, and yet another here, which we can't see for sure whether it belongs to the older one or the younger one, but I think it belongs to the younger one. This is the Older Hall. Here is the entrance. The only thing we know about the hall is this part. This was a smithy. In the smithy, we found the only slag that has been found in Stöð. We found a furnace stone, and we found bog iron, which is good enough for me to say this was a smithy. Here we see a section through the long wall of both of the houses. Oops. This is the cut between the walls. So this is the old wall, and this is the Younger Hall. The arrows shows where we took tephra samples, and in this sample here, we found several tephras, and among them the LL tephra, 871 plus minus 2. And in this, we found a tephra from the 9th century. Can't come any closer than that. In the older wall, first we found Grímsvötn, circa 860, and then Katla from the 9th century. The problem with those is they are not very well dated. There is a time lapse that we can't control, at least not for now. And the reason is that tephras younger than 871 are very well documented, analyzed, and dated, but tephras older than the classic settlement isn't. So we have this white datings of it. This is something that needs to be done, and we are probably going to do that. This is a section taken outside the hall, and here we see Veiðivötn, 1477, Öræfajökull, this yellowish thin stripe. Then we have Grímsvötn, 1159, and then we have a layer here which is either 885 or 875, and in the bottom we have a prehistoric layer which we call Hekla 3, which is 2250 BC. This tephra here is quite a bit above this layer here. This layer is a cultural layer with charcoal, burnt bones, and so on. So it is older than this. How much older, we don't know yet, but probably a bit older. And this layer here is in contact with another layer on a big site, which I have called an activity site. This tells us that that site probably belongs to the older phase of the settlement. These are the first dating from Stöð. There is a problem there between 800 and 900. The calibration curve is so flat, so we usually get a very broad time frame. Here we have the amount of finds or special finds, like spindle whorls. We have found 37, and that is the most ever in Iceland. Loom weights are not so many, but anyway, 13 against 16 in Hofstadr. Silver is more, it's more silver than in all of these combined. And the same goes with lead. There's a very small fragment of gold. Then we have the lead weights, which is highest. The beads are, this is outrageous, 180 and still growing. To compare this with, for instance, the biggest hole in Norway, it's Borg in Lofoten, circa 80 meters long, definitely a chieftain's farm. There are to be found 34 beads, and that's over a time period of 300 or 400 years. So the whetstones are also many, soapstone are many, and the dishes, which I will talk about later. Here we have 3 samples of lead weights. The round one and square one are pretty common, but this one is, I haven't found anything like this in the literature. This is green glass that has been put into a hole in the lead. This and other finds show us that the people at Stöð in the younger phase, they were trading. Arabic coin, Roman coin, and Roman coin, which could actually be weights. This is part of the trading arsenal. An Arabic coin, which has not been properly dated. There are 2 possibilities. One is 9th century, the other is the beginning of the 10th, sorry. There you can see it. I am not sure about this analysis. Sigurður is not an expert. He works at the Mint Cabinet in Iceland. Silvering some of the beads, some are very common, others are not. The eye bead here is quite rare in Iceland. Gold foliate, silver foliate, typical bluish. This bead is from Asia, for instance. This is a local bead. This is a rock crystal bead, also from far away. amber bead from the Baltic Sea, probably one of two that has been found. So we only have 2 amber beads of 180. Those are quite interesting. Whetstone. Usually all whetstones have been set coming from Eidsborg, which is in southern Norway. It's in, I forgot it now. Anyway, but if you look at the color here, you can see it's a bit purple, and purple color and fine-grained schist is typical for heingrúa in northern Norway, pretty near Trondheim. This is from the older house. The analysis of the splitter from the young hall show that they were making whetstones on the spot, not as you usually have thought that all whetstones were imported, ready-made. That was not the case in the old hall of Stöð. They brought it with them as raw material and made whetstones out of it on the spot, either to sell or use themselves. This is the doorway into the young hall, and there is another one beneath this, a bit broader, typical. Here we see the doorway into the younger hall and the doorway into the old hall, quite broader and not with stone slabs in the floor. This is the oven in the smithy. This is the furnace stone, quite rare in Iceland, or let's say it has only been found in one excavation so far in Reykjavik, Suðurgata 325. And a typical furnace stone has a hole which is narrower in one end, so it's conical. This is the long fire of the hall, the younger one. We haven't found any long fire in the old yet, but there are indications that it might be here. The same thing, the long fire. This is a unique construction. If you look here, you can see the younger floor going here towards the stones. This is a whetstone, and this is the wall line. So sometimes after the settlement, they felt need to build this extra wall inside the house, both on this side, which is the southern side, and on the northern side. So where benches were, we find this extra wall. And we can also see that the tephra in it is different than the tephra in the walls. This tephra is probably taken in the mire or wetland beneath the halls. Sacks, wool sacks. This is a spindle wall of soapstone. 11 of 37 are of soapstone, which is pretty high. So this is a foreign or alias stone type in Iceland, isn't to be found. So this is brought from abroad. This is about the spindle whorls. It's in Icelandic there, yeah. And this shows us that there were many types of spindle whorls. Some were very light, some were heavy. And that indicates that they were producing many types of yarn. The lightest one here, for instance, they were used for extra fine and extra expensive yarn. This one is too heavy to be a spindle wool. This is something we called drilling wool, used to drill. This is one of two harpoons found in Stöð in the younger hall. This is to fasten the line in so you wouldn't lose it. The other one is a spearhead, typical spearhead, but spearhead is also usable as an harpoon. It's more romantic to connect it with war and hostility and power and status, but in Iceland, it was more practical to use them to hunt seal, small whales, for instance. This is an axe from the younger hall. And as you see in the text, axes have only been found in 3 other houses from Viking Age. Usually we find them in graves or stray finds. And those stones are one of the most interesting finds in Stöð. I will start with the one in the upper corner to the right, the eolith. This resembles very much a Stone Age axe, but that was the idea, because in the old days people believed that those were created after lightnings. When Thor traveled in the sky and used the hammer and created lightnings, and those stones fell to the ground, and the Vikings either picked them up and used them as strike-a-light stones, or they created such stones by themselves. To have it looking like a Thor stone, which is also called, that was securing the quality of the stones. It was easier to make fire if you had a Thor stone. The others are flakes, and the analysis of all of these have showed that those stones were used to produce knives, scrapers, and other tools in abundances. They brought it with them from the neighborhood and striked it with metal hammer or bone. That is what the analyses say. There is about 800 of such stones now found out of circa 2,000 finds, meaning this was a very important artifact in Stöð. We know, for instance, that some of the tools found in the house were made outside the house, while other tools were made in the house but used outside the houses. And some of the stones weren't used at all, they were just laying in the floor layer, possibly because they were simply too small, but brought in anyway. Yes, very interesting find. And now it's the dishes, stone dishes, found in Stöð. They are of several types of stone, soft, hard. Some are well done, others are not so well done. The aim was to get a semicircular dish. And we have now found over 100 of these dishes, but they are very rare in Iceland, and that could be because of that people simply didn't see them or recognize them. They can be hard to recognize for the first time, but all of those stones are struck. They are blown to get the right shape. I have now been in contact with Denmark, Sweden, and Norway and asked about these dishes, and they have not been found in Sweden, not in Denmark, but they have been found in Norway on 2 sites, Bergen and Trondheim. And there are several hundreds of them in Trondheim, and 2 types. One type is mainly made of soapstone with decorations. They are smooth and more or less all of the same size. The others look like these. And but the scholars have said that all of them are gaming pieces, for instance, to play kotra. I don't believe that, of course. They are not gaming pieces, and then I'm talking about the more rudimentary stones, not the decorated. They are surely gaming pieces. Same goes with the stones in Bergen. They're just cataloged as stone dishes, gaming pieces. Then there are 7 stones in the Shetlands, and they haven't even tried to explain them. They just call them stone dishes, both of ordinary stone and of soapstone. And then we have a few finds from Ireland, Dublin, in a monastery, and they are explained as gaming pieces. But I haven't seen pictures of them, so they could be decorated or they could not. Those are the places where they have been found, just a few of them. All of these sites is in South Iceland, and just a few of them is in the inland, which makes sense for me. So what were they used for? I will tell you that later. They were used for this. This is a stomach from a seal to store oil or tran, whale oil, fish oil, seal oil, or shark oil. And in this case, they have a, what do you call this? Prop to close it. But I think that our stone dishes were used instead. They were put in the neck and then a rope around beneath and rope around above. And then you got a very tight stomach with tran. This is my plan for the next summer, which wasn't supposed to come now, so I'll go back. So if it is right that the dishes was for keeping whale oil or seal oil or any other oil in, that means that the oil production on the site was severe and probably for export on markets in Europe. It's too much for the farm itself. And 90 pieces of dishes is very, very, very much. If they are all gaming pieces, we are talking about a problem in Stöð. So, is it possible that some of the dishes in Trondheim and Bergen could be of Icelandic origin? We don't know. That should be pretty easy to control. And some stone dishes, other than those from Stöð, from Iceland, they have a hole in them. And that is probably for home use to pour the oil into the stone lamp and close it again, instead of have to unwrap it twice. And some of the dishes in Norway also have holes, not necessarily in the middle, it could be anywhere. It doesn't have to be the whale only, it could be seal in Stöð and the shark. We have now found 4 shark teeth in one of the activity sites of Stöð. So this is the plan for next season. I want to look for the grave. If we find a grave in Stöð, the possibility to find a chieftain grave is pretty good, and a chieftain grave is pretty rich. And I have a model of where graves are. They are always visual from the farm. They are not more than 300 meters away, and they are on a hill or something like that, but rarely on the top of it, but slightly to the sides towards the farm. I also believe that there is a boathouse by the shoreline. Now we know where the shoreline was. It was beneath the farm. So the boathouse is always situated where the ocean met the land, with a gable towards the sea. There is not one boathouse from Viking Age excavated yet, as for sure. There may be one in the Westfjords, which I think is too young, and there may be one in the east, which is definitely from Viking Age, but we haven't been able to prove that it was a boathouse. But there is a legend about a boathouse in the neighborhood from a very wealthy farm in Reyðarfjörður, and this could be it. I don't want to talk anything about the sections. You guys, the DNA guys, might be lucky enough to find human remains in the samples. And if you do so, you might be able to compare them, and then you might find similarities. One of the tricky questions is, why did the settler settle down in Stöðvarfjörður when all the other fjords are much richer when it comes to grazing possibilities, salmon rivers, and so forth, even bog iron, but he didn't. So there are some possible explanation that it was the same chieftain that in the beginning used the station for his own purpose, and later on decided to settle down in this new country. And why he chose Stöðvarfjörður might be because at that very time it was a very good decision, very tactical and strategic decision. Then he was able to move to the south in the next fjord and the north in the next fjord, but this became hard in the end because others had claimed those fjords. So a good decision became a fatal decision, and this family or this chieftain disappeared into history. Another reason could be that the chieftain knew that in Stöðvarfjörður there were houses. So it was a good start sailing to his own station and living in the old hall for a while and then build a new hall. So he was familiar with the fjord. Another possibility is that it was the gods that told him to go to Stöðvarfjörður. So I think I'll leave it there, and you can start the grilling.